Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Legend of Korra episode commentary. This is going to be the start of my Book 4 Balance episode commentaries, so this one's going to be for K401 after all these years, the opening episode of the book. To sync up your copy of the episode with this commentary track, what you need to do is have the episode ready to press play and start with the opening of every episode of Korra, you know, the Kyoshi, Earth, Fire, Air, Water bits, I'm going to stop speaking in a moment. When I come back after that pause, you hit play, I'll hit play, and then we'll be both synced up, and you can watch along with me. So I'm going to stop speaking now, hit play when I start speaking again. Okay, so here is The Legend of Korra, Book 4 Balance, Episode 1, After All These Years. Probably the most hyped the fandom has ever been for a return for a season. We didn't have long to wait in that Book 4 came out only a couple of months after the end of Book 3, which really helped because of how crazy the situation was with Korra. And so we start off this book with this really interesting recap on what the world is like now, and just get introduced to a completely different world 3 years on. And yeah, I like this kind of tourist kind of advert here, kind of just talking about how all the various attractions of the city. Avatar Korra Park, there's now a statue of Korra in the park, which is really cool, that the city really respects what she's done. And then the Spirit Wilds were seen as this hindrance, but now they are using it as this major tourist attraction, that this is a place where, in the world, one of the only places where you can have spirits around you. And you see Gamu there with making friends with the spirits. Something that's not really addressed throughout the whole book, the idea that spirits are actually friendly with humans in the city for the most part. But yeah, we start to see a lot of new character designs. A lot of the older characters don't change too much, but our main cast, you know, Asami, you see the Air kids there. Milo has hair. Jinora has her hair grown back after the tattoo ceremony 3 years ago, and the characters look very different. Prince Wu we see there, Mako in the background. Here's Asami. Asami doesn't look too much different than her previous design for the most part. Definitely older, more mature, but still very similar designs. They didn't do anything too crazy with their outfits. But yeah, Prince Wu is an interesting character for me in that when he starts off, once you get to know who he is, that he's going to be the Earth King once everything's stabilized, there's this obvious character development kind of arc set up for him, but you're worried that because he's a comedy character, they're not going to do anything with it. But as the series goes on, and you see his interactions with Mako go on, and his interactions with the rest of Team Avatar, it actually turns into a pretty decent minor character arc throughout this book, about him learning to respect the people, become less of this kind of spoiled royalty member and stuff like that. So there's some very interesting stuff going on with Wu. I'm not the biggest fan of Mako's new design. I felt that making his hair, taking away his kind of trademark spiky hair, it was not a great decision. And then his outfit for the most part is very bland, so I'm not the biggest fan of Mako's new look, because it doesn't look like he's like a police officer of any sort. It looks really weird to me. And yeah, it's just interesting to see that most of the members of Team Avatar haven't seen each other in a while. You see, Mako hasn't even talked to Bolin in a while because he's off with Kuvira, and he's been so busy he hasn't talked to Asami, and they're all waiting for Korra. Korra is scheduled to return to the city, and it's this really cool setup throughout this episode, that the lead up is that one of the last scenes of this episode is going to be us catching up with Korra. Has she healed over the past 3 years, and so on. And yeah, reference to Book 3, the death of Hu Ting. Everyone assuring him that he, for the most part, will be alright. There's very little chance of an assassination attempt, and they don't alleviate his fears that much at all. Mostly. Almost zero. Just those words, almost, nearly, just. And yeah. And then this is really interesting. These scenes here kind of really do lead you into a false sense of security about who the main characters of the book are going to be. When you see Opal and Kai arrive on scene and get a decent part of this episode to themselves, you really think that, oh wow, they're going to be like really heavy supporting characters or almost main characters in this book after the 3 years. But really, this is it for those two in the book. Opal gets a little bit more focus, but Kai kind of disappears after the early parts of the season. So that's interesting. But still, Opal, you could tell she's older, but her design hasn't changed drastically, apart from the fact that she can clearly airbend, and she's wearing the new airbending wingsuit design thing. And yeah, Kai clearly being one of the younger characters with Jinora, definitely you see the 3 years the most in them, and just see how powerful they are. Just the two of them able to take down these bandits instantly. And yeah, this is what was set up at the end of Book 3, that Tenzin and the Airbenders are going to be basically taking on Korra's role while she's inactive, and basically going around the world helping people with these various odd jobs, being these kind of nomadic helpers. In essence, Jedi, basically, is a good comparison in terms of what they're trying to do. This is the province of Yai in the Earth Kingdom, and Kavira is obviously going to come in and take it over, and just establish that she's looking for materials and looking to take over everywhere in the Earth Kingdom. And here we go, our introduction to Kavira. We see that Batar Jr. is with her, and also that Varric, Julie, and Bolin are also with her. Which is interesting, like in that we knew going in Kavira was going to be the villain. They made that blatantly obvious by the way they introduced Kavira in Book 3. But seeing Bolin on her side was interesting. They need to explain this, because even from this first episode, you maybe don't get the full villainous extent of Kavira, you'd still understand that she is the villain. She just her attitude, it comes across as, okay, she's the villain. No one's going to celebrate until they have the 100% of the Earth Kingdom. And yeah, you just see like these various things with her movement, personality come across, and just her actions that, the rest of them are all like very active to try and keep their balance as the train comes to a halt, but she uses the least amount of movements possible to stop herself falling over. And then when she comes out here to fight these guys on her own, it really gets over how her style of earth and metal bending. Very little use of earth bending, more focused on metal bending, and again, least amount of energy possible, basically, when fighting these people. See, just effortlessly dodging things. That's one of the only times we really see her do proper earth bending. And then everything else is just these really quick movements, trapping people, no crazy, like, big movements like you'd usually expect from metal bending or earth bending. Just really gets across her personality and kind of her style. Just blocking people's eyes, trapping people's legs, trapping people's arms. That's her style of fighting. And it works for her with her whole power kind of thing throughout the entire book. But yeah, it's a big kind of change for Kavira in that, like, we saw her fight a little bit in Book 3, but she has clearly become something amazing over the past 3 years while everyone's been away, forming this Earth Empire, basically, even though it's not quite called that just yet. But this is definitely the villainous part here. She's kind of like bent their arms to the tracks, and basically just offers them the chance, join me or we'll leave your arms there for the next train to cut them off. And yeah, all about power. She's enjoying so much having power over these people, and again, that's the key aspect of her character throughout the entire book. Rehabilitation camps and all this sort of stuff she's talking about, asking them to join her. And this is kind of ultimately one of Kavira's weaknesses that Zhu Li takes advantage of, that if people just bow down and offer themselves completely to her, she'll usually accept them without anything happening. And when, Zhu Li fully pledges loyalty to her, apparently betrays Varric, you see that very clearly, and she nearly gets her weapon taken out by Zhu Li towards the middle part of this book. Nice hat, Wu. And yeah, Mako's paired up with Wu for the most of this book. And it's definitely an interesting thing. You can see the impact that Mako has on Wu's life. Mako being a more normal person helps Wu to really kind of understand normal people, I suppose. And Wu really looks up to Mako, like, heavily, you see throughout this entire series. And then this is just showing that Mako comes from a very humble background, being an orphan, struggling to just live, having to be a pro bender, while Wu was all about just living in the lap of luxury. And then you start to get introduced to the Kuvira supporters. Wu doesn't have many supporters himself. Kuvira's forces, Earth Empire, has a lot of support just from normal people because she's managing, I suppose, the media appearance, general appearance of her very well. In that most people only know the good things she's doing and none of the bad. Bolin included, despite being so high up in the Earth Empire kind of food chain. And yeah, the whole idea, like, there's an assassination attempt about to happen, but no, just pies. And then the whole mix-up with what he's allergic to. It's a gusher. I'm allergic to strawberries. No, you're allergic to bees, which is an interesting thing with, like, every member of the Earth Kingdom royal family has something about animals. King Kwei had a pet normal bear. Hu Ting was allergic to animals and hated them and ate them or something like that. And Wu was allergic to animals and has a good relationship with badger moles. It's really interesting how they did that. Wu down is his catchphrase. Bees and strawberries, very easy to get them mixed up. And yeah, once again, you cut back to Opal and Kai in this episode. This is a plot in this first episode that Opal and Kai are involved with Yai making this big decision, that they realize that the air nomads, the airbenders, are spread too thin and they can't help everyone, but Kuvira has enough power to do that, so interesting. Kai nearly as tall as Bolin. And then just stating that Opal and Bolin are still a couple, but they've had issues because of him joining Kuvira, and references about all this stuff that's happened in the past. You know, like, oh, what happened between the family when it was primarily just that Kuvira left after the whole thing with Su Yin not wanting to stabilize the Earth Kingdom herself, and she took Batar Jr. with him, and they took it as betrayal. Because they could have made it more clear the specifics of everything that happened there, and it was very quickly done. It's just like, Kuvira disagrees, she leaves, everyone's angry at Kuvira. Needs more backstory. And Opal, here's how she helps towns, by conquering them, and the first hint that what she's doing is just wrong. She's taking over these places by force, as opposed to just coming in there, taking out some of the bandits, and just helping to restabilize the place. She's full on taking over large parts of the Earth Kingdom. And then the Batar Jr. Kuvira engagement is interesting. You don't get much on their relationship. It's left until like episode 11 basically to cover everything with their relationship. But it's interesting. You know, she definitely cares somewhat about him at the very least. But at the end of the day, her goals are more important to her than him. And here's the kind of behind the scenes thing. She's there with the owner, basically, the leader of Yai here, and no one else is around to hear her demands. But she's demanding that he signs over everything. The people, every single material available in this province and stuff like that. It's the extent, she's really blackmailing him, like, we will stabilize and help your country if you give me everything. And eventually it's forced into a position where that's the only thing that can happen. You see kind of the setup later on that Kuvira's obviously got the bandits to join her, and then she makes them stop any relief efforts later on in this episode, as we're going to see in the next action scene pretty much. And here she's very calm, but now she starts to get aggressive. yeah, it's just like if she was really trying to stabilize the Earth Kingdom, she would just help him without having to have the Yai agree to all this kind of crazy demands. And you really see the villainous side of her come out. So I like that, and she presents a completely different character to most of the other people. Like she's completely different around Bolin and Opal and stuff like that. She just talks about all of that's just rumors and stuff like that. But on her own, you see the stuff that she's actually doing. And eventually it gets to the point where she can't hold it all back. She gets too frustrated with the people around her and reveals her kind of true villainous intent to more and more people. And you start to see the relationship between Opal and Bolin kind of begin to fall apart because she knows exactly what Kavir is about, but Bolin can't see it even though he's closer to her than she is. It's definitely set up for Bolin having to realize the truth about Kuvira, and hopefully the two can get back together and get past it. But and you see that later on with the whole Beifong plot with Toph coming into play and stuff like that. But still, it's a decent plot over the course of the book, the Bolin Opal relationship. Here we go, there are people donating food to the other places, and they're going to deliver this food, which will help Yai until the airbenders can actually get there and help them fully and really stop all the bandits. And here we go, here's some relationship talk. She doesn't like the long-distance relationship, or that he's working for Kuvira, but Kai notices that having this job kind of has helped him change a bit, grow up. Hope they're not growing apart. But yeah, another long distance relationship between Kai and Jinora, and they're doing fine, but that's all we get on the relationship in the entire book, which for me is a big loss. I would have really wished that they would have done something more with it, but they didn't. But definitely a big lost opportunity that they could have done. I would have loved to have seen what their relationship is like now that they're about 13, 14 years old, around the ATLA cruise age. They could have done something with it, but Jinora isn't a focus of this book. Kai isn't a focus of this book. But yeah, here you see the bandits. I think this is one of the guys you captured earlier on, and obviously the bandits couldn't possibly have airplanes of their own, so Kuvira clearly gave him that, and that's how they're able to stop this supply run, which puts the people of Yai in a position where they don't have this aid, and puts Kai and Opal in a position where the only thing they can say is just that you have to sign this agreement, as bad as it is, to save the people of your town. Opal gets a big moment here, saving Kai after his suit is cut. It's a really cool scene, actually, just to show the what the airbenders are like now. Even just a couple of them are really powerful on their own. But yeah, we see that the airbenders have kind of failed. As much as they're back now, there's more of them. There's not enough of them to really help the whole world, do the whole job of the Avatar, basically. And the only thing they can do now is, put the people before any kind of thought of people controlling you and stuff like that. Your people have to eat and stuff like that. It's a surprisingly emotional moment here when you see this town have to sign over everything to Kuvira, but he didn't really have a choice in the end. He had to do it. And yeah, more designs, more focus on the Air Kids. There's Pabu living on Air Temple Island. Everyone was wondering the entire book where he was, but he's right there in the first episode. And that's actually pretty fitting, that thing for Milo, in that you see his drawings go from being like very childish to actually being really good, which is a kind of hint in the first episode that he's actually very good at drawing. There's President Raiko and his wife, Buttercup Raiko. Weird name. And Mako is just like, I can't wait to get back to being a detective, but sorry, he's requested you specifically. He really likes you. And I like how Lane is just kind of not very formal with Mako now, because they're really close in rank basically right now. But she's like, oh, I know we've worked together for a while now, but I'm really sorry to tell you this. He's like, I'm a firebender guy, what are you doing? And Raiko's basically just using Mako to get in good with the new Earth Kingdom monarch. And here's the everyone's excited to see Korra again. It's been like that is like 2 years and a long amount of months. No, I don't think it's fully 3 years, but we shall see. But yeah, they cut away once again, and you see the good things the Earth Empire is doing. They're bringing all the food, they're giving everyone who needs it the food, the supplies, letting the kids run around and stuff like that. But as soon as the main group leaves, as soon as Bolin leaves and stuff like that, it's just the normal troops left there. The people are going to be put to work as slaves, and yes, they will be fed and stuff like that. All the like materials, minerals, metals and stuff like that are going to be taken, and it's just another city to add to her completion rate of the whole Earth Empire. And you just kind of like, she's hiding it behind like aid that what she's actually doing is wrong. It's an interesting dynamic. They don't touch on it too much outside the first couple of episodes. Because there are only 13 episodes in the season, they have to very quickly get across everything about her, have the characters discover that she's a villain and stuff like that. And off the boat comes Tonrock, looking a bit older, some streaks of grey in his hair, and Naga. And he's like, oh, what? I thought she was here already. She left like 6 months ago. She should be here. And everyone's just like, what? What happened? Korra's like been lying to her father, lying to everyone else. She wasn't actually going to turn up. And everyone's just like, oh, what has happened to Korra? Then you cut off to this someplace randomly in the Earth Kingdom. Korra in the middle of basically a bending MMA fight and is getting beaten up by just a random Earthbender girl. And Korra's only using Earthbending here, as we see. And she can still bend, you see, but she doesn't do anything fancy here. There was one small rock. Again, just one small rock and a little pillar. Taking a lot of beating, but she can still move around. So there's some level of recovery here. She can move around. She's not confined to a wheelchair. But she's got no power in her bending. And doesn't seem to have that drive, fighting spirit that she had as the Avatar. And she's doing this to make money and also, I suppose, to prove her recovery. And then here we go. Someone's going to recognize her as the Avatar, but no, she disagrees. And obviously she wants to get away from the guy, but then he asks, what happened to that Avatar? And she just says, I wouldn't know. And she doesn't even look like she's trying to hide it, like she's slightly embarrassed that she's noticed or anything like that. It's just, I wouldn't know, because I'm not the Avatar at this point in time. As we see in the next episode, that's exactly the case. At this point in time, she's trying to go undercover. She's not trying to be the Avatar. She doesn't want people to recognize her as the Avatar because physically, emotionally, she doesn't feel like the Avatar. That's a really interesting position for the writers to put Korra in at the end of this first episode of the book, that she's had 3 years to recover, and it's almost even worse that she doesn't want to be the Avatar anymore. But as we see in the next episode, she really does want to be the Avatar, but she just can't seem to complete her recovery. And because she's not at that full power, she's not going to take on that role when she knows she's not able to handle it. And so that's why she's not like responding to being called the Avatar and stuff like that. It's a really interesting dynamic, but we'll talk more about that in the next episode for Korra Alone, which hopefully I should have out towards the end of the week. Maybe I'll have 2 or 3 commentaries out this week. Not really sure, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's been the commentary for K401 after all these years. Thanks for listening, and bye.